I don't know, you're going first?
Yeah, I'm going.
There you go.
Well, good morning. On behalf of the Guatemala Vision Team, I just want to thank the congregation for your support, both financially and prayerfully, first of all, and thank God for providing an amazing trip for us. There's a ton of stories that we could all share, and through the emails, I think a lot of you had received them as I was sending them from Guatemala. Ask these kids, ask these adults what they've experienced. There's a lot that went on there. Just a couple things I want to touch on is that really got to me was how well, it's kind of cliche when you go on a trip, but God put the puzzle pieces of this team together as a perfect fit. As far as a group goes, there's different personalities and different things like that all come together. And I don't think I've ever been part of a larger group that has meshed so well, gotten along so well, and carried out God's plan for that trip. But the thing I think that got to me most throughout the week we were there is just seeing how God intervened. Throughout the week, how God took time to just use us there on this trip to see what was going on. When we needed a break and were invited to go to a park, how that was needed. How God took a pair of shoes, and you have to ask Chris about this, in an amazing way, what an amazing story, how he intervened and used that beyond more than what we could even imagine. How, what are some of the other things? There's just so many on my mind. Just the way that he, when we wanted to go on zip lining too, on Saturday was kind of our day away, and there was rain the night before. We just remained positive about the whole situation, and God took care of the rain, and the next day we were able to go. But his timing through technical difficulties that turned into another situation, that was just an amazing experience. But again, I would encourage you, ask these adults, ask these young men and women the stories, because there's so much good that came out of this trip. Trevor, you're next.
One of my favorite things we did in Guatemala was something that wasn't even scheduled to happen, and that was playing in the parks with the kids. I especially enjoyed interacting with the Guatemalans through some friendly games of soccer. The first time we were able to play was with some seminary students. They were very welcoming and asked us to play while we were watching them and eating lunch. We also got to play with some younger kids a few days later in another park, and then on one of our last days, we got to play with some adults that were pretty good soccer players. It was so much fun to compete with them and just have a blast playing together. Even though we did not speak the same language, we communicated so much without even saying a word. The adults and kids of Guatemala were so accepting of us and also asked us to play, which made me wonder if back home we would do the same thing. Am I as accepting of others as I could be, and do I accept others with open arms? This trip made me think about what I personally can do differently and what we as believers can do differently. Then lastly, I just want to thank all you for all your support through this whole thing. We had a blast. It was a great experience for all of us.
When we were in Guatemala, one of the days was spent with a man named Shorty. We began that day hearing his moving testimony of God's faithfulness in his life. I don't think I have ever heard of someone who went from such brokenness and darkness into being such a light for others. As Shorty shared about how he was involved in a gang and a lot of other things he wasn't proud of in his past, and how after living in the U.S. for a few years, he was deported back to Guatemala, leaving his 2- and 4-year-old daughters without their dad. As he continued to share his story, he spoke about how difficult it has been for him since he hasn't seen his daughters since being deported from the U.S. 15 years without seeing his kids. That fact was unbelievable and heart-wrenching to me. Although he wanted so badly to see his daughters, it was never safe enough or possible for them to come. But the day finally came while we were there, in fact, for his 2 daughters, Sarah, now 19, and Priscilla, now 17, to fly from Texas to see the dad they missed so bad. Joel was planning on going to the airport, and he told our group a few of us could go along. So myself, Kara, Maddie, and Sarah got to go. I can't even put into words how sweet of a reunion it was to witness. For me, I learned a lot through that moment. I learned not to give up on people with old shorty type lifestyles, because with Jesus, he was able to turn his life around the right way, and the fruit of that was being able to see his daughters again. Also, when seeing the joy on Shorty's face when he first saw his daughters reminded me of God longing each one of us to come back to him. Such a sweet moment to be a part of, and so glad I could witness it. It was such a blessing to me.
I am very blessed to have had the opportunity to travel to Guatemala for the second time. I left my heart in Guatemala last time when I was down with Emmanuel. It was amazing to see and experience the place I love so much again. God clearly brought my best friend Maddie and I to tackle this journey together. Last time I was in Guatemala, we met with a ministry called Sigo Vivo. They work with the street gangs in Guatemala and help them to break free of drug and alcohol abuse and bring them to know Jesus. This time I ran into Tati, who is one of the leaders of Sigo Vivo, who also speaks really good English, so that was nice. And I had the opportunity to sit down with her and talk about how far their ministry has come. I came to find out Sigo Vivo spent a year ministering without a place to call their home, as the government wouldn't allow them to minister at the location that they were. So they simply had their program in the dirty streets of Guatemala. Tati shared the struggles and hurts that were only a part of God's plan. And through lots of prayers, God brought them together with two other ministries in Guatemala. They all partnered together to effectively spread God's word. They now have a location to minister, and the three combined ministries are thriving as God's presence is so evident. It was so impactful for me to actually see how God has moved in Guatemala over the past 2 years. This conversation really made me realize that no matter how hard things get, God has a plan that will in the end show its love and beauty to the fullest. I left Guatemala more in love than before, and God's works has never been more evident. This trip has challenged my faith and really makes me want to share Jesus back at home.
Hi, I'm Maddie Vandenheuvel, and I had the wonderful opportunity to take part in the Guatemala Vision Trip. Throughout the week, God made himself very apparent to me, whether it was through the people we met, the difficult sights that we saw, or the late night talks amongst the team. God opened my eyes and my heart to what it was he had in store for me. Not being a member of Emmanuel added to the anxiety that I already had prior to the trip. And being someone who easily gives in to fear, it was quite surprising that I even chose to get on the bus the morning of departure. But it was through this trip and all the fear that it encompassed that God taught me what it meant to really trust him. Coming from a split family and a past filled with anxiety, trusting God can be a daily struggle. But it was here in Guatemala that God really grabbed hold of my spirit and put things into perspective. He allowed me to feel the hurt of Guatemala, to see the kids that went hungry on a day-to-day basis, and the parents that sold their homemade goods for almost anything just to make it by in life. Regardless of the struggle, the people always had this sense of hope that God was going to take care of them, no matter what the circumstances. It was through the affliction that God told me to give it to him, just like these people were doing in and day out. Guatemala will forever hold a special place in my heart. Thank you.
I just want to echo Jeff's thanks to you as a congregation and to the friends and family of the team for all the prayers, financial support, and also the donations that were given. We collected, I think it was 19 or 20 suitcases filled with kids' shoes, soccer jerseys, soccer balls, blankets, sweaters, all that were distributed amongst the different ministries in Guatemala, and I know they were a huge blessing, so thank you for all that you donated. And I just want to share just a quick story of how one of those donations was given out. The day the team left, our family of 5 stayed for some extra days because our youngest, Jessie, is from Guatemala. So we stayed, and that very first day, we had the opportunity and blessing to spend that first day with Joel and Marilyn, our missionaries in Guatemala. And one of the things that we did with them was we went to the house of Maria. If you've seen, she's the doll lady. If you've seen the movie Reparando, you would remember her as the one who works in the dump. She goes through the dump on a daily basis looking for doll parts, so heads, legs, arms, and then she puts together dolls that she sells to make money for her family. and symbolic in a lot of ways of restoration. From something from the dump comes something beautiful that she sells. And so anyways, that day we got the opportunity as a family to go with Joel and Marilyn to her home on the outskirts of the dump. And we visited her. We were able to buy a couple dolls from her. And also, we took along with us a soccer ball that was donated, a pump, and a soccer jersey. And the cool God story here is that we only had one soccer jersey from this specific team that was Maria's granddaughter's favorite team. And Maria's granddaughter is suffering from intestinal cancer right now. In fact, she's in the midst of her treatment for her cancer. And so a 15-year-old girl who has a passion for soccer and for a specific team, God brought one jersey, just one jersey, specifically her size, and we were able to bring that jersey and soccer ball to her. We were able to pray with her and her family, and what a tremendous blessing it was for us to bring that to her, and just what a blessing that she was in our life that day. So just one small story.
As a church, back last February, 2 Februaries ago, we made a decision to be involved in church planting. And when this trip started in October, a question came up from those of us who have been involved in the church planting: will we get to see or spend time with any of the people in Guatemala that we're supporting? And the answer was no. But God had other plans. When we got to Guatemala, the last 2.5 days we spent with Rafael Valiente. He is one of the guys that we are sponsoring as a church. And he was our tour guide for 2 days while Shorty was spending time with his daughters. But it was neat to be able to spend time with him to see what he's doing. And on the last day that we were with him, Carrie and I were invited to go with him down into the community that he's serving. It's La Limonada, and it's down in the valley of a river, and there's 60,000 people living in this valley. The oldest family that's been there probably 56 years ago, they started moving in there. And he is ministering in that community. He took us to his kind of right-hand guy, another pastor, and they were telling us how they're taking every opportunity in that community to share the gospel with various invitations that they have. And their church is in houses. They meet from week to week in the various houses, and I think he said they have 25 families. But keep in mind that their homes are probably half the size of this stage. So lots of people crowded into a small space. But he thanked us for our support and asked me to pass that along to you as a congregation.
Okay, I guess that leaves me. Bear with me, because this might be a little long-winded. I signed up for Guatemala for very insignificant reasons and with little thought about it. It went something like this. My daughter said, "Mom, I really want to go on the Guatemala trip." I said, "Allie, I'm just not sure this is the right summer for it." She said, "But it's the last summer I'll be able to go." I said, "Okay, fine." Before you know it, bada bing, bada boom, not only is she going, but I am too, and our journey begins. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that was God showing up. In the months and weeks and even days leading up to the trip, my attitude got worse, and my grief got darker and darker. As many of you know, most of you know, my 13-year-old son, David, was killed in a car crash 1 year ago, August 3. This past year has been hard and very dark in many ways. Losing a child changes everything. Everything you thought you knew about yourself, your life, your family, your faith, even your God. Everything you thought you knew, bang. It's all shattered, and you have to find a way to sort out the pieces. Well, I was sick of sorting out the pieces. I didn't even want the pieces, let alone sort them out and put them back together somehow. I threw my hands up in the air in anger and frustration and deep despair and said, you know what, God? If you want me to live this life, you're going to have to show up, because I'm done. And then I got on a plane to Guatemala. You could probably guess he showed up. I'll share with you a few, I'll keep it as brief as I can, stories, because there's lots of them. But about 2 days in, we had the privilege to go to a church there and meet with a pastor and find out he did this beautiful presentation about what they were doing there and how his church was growing and their story, and it was great. And we had lunch and had a little more time than we had expected, so we ended up impromptu going to a park. And we always carried our little bag of balls with us in case we got to play with kids. We'd go do that. So that opportunity arose that day. And not really my thing to jump into a crowd of people and start playing with kids I don't know and that kind of thing, but it was great to see these kids just jump right in. I mean, just jump right in. They were so excited to be doing something and get out of a building and stop listening for a while. And it was just beautiful to see. And there was this one little boy who didn't quite fit in, and he kind of went from group to group, playing for a little while, but then walking away and not doing that, and then playing over here. And he came over to Jeff and I a couple times, and he just seemed awkward and out of place, and he looked like he may have had some physical difficulties as well, but just out of place. And so he caught my eye for whatever reason, and as we were about to leave, his caregiver or mother, I'm not sure if it was his mom or not, came running, chasing after him and calling his name. She said, "David, David," and his name was David. And I just had this little moment of, interesting. I don't think David is that common of a name, at least not for a first name down there. But it was just this moment where I thought, well, that's interesting. And I got to thinking that if my David was there, that would have been the kid he reached out to. That was just him. He just fit with people who didn't fit and could get along with everybody. And that would have been the kid he would have sought out. So that was my first little moment. God showed up. Later that evening, we had the opportunity to go to a police station for a worship service. And we had gone to a worship service at a mega church on Sunday, and it was big and beautiful and impressive, and I didn't really recognize any of the music. I mean, obviously, praise songs in a different country are going to be different. But this service was different, and I felt it right from the start. We came in, and it was a very intimate setting, and we started the service, and we were going to participate in it too, but I think it was the second song in. Wouldn't you know it, we sing 10,000 Reasons, and that song is very special to me. It was David's favorite song to sing in chapel, and we sang it at his funeral, and a choir of his peers sang it, and it was just beautiful, and that song just brings me back. It brings me back to David. It brings me back to God. It brings me back to those days, those hard days, but it is just a very, very powerful song to me. And out of all the praise songs in all the world and all the times, we were singing that song, and it was a powerful moment to hear them singing it in Spanish, and some of us were singing in English, and it made me a mess. But then the service proceeded on, and we had some of the girls give their beautiful testimonies, and it was great, and it was powerful and wonderful. And then it came to the time of us doing a couple skits, and we needed our computer to work for the music for one of the skits, and it wouldn't work. And this is what Jeff was talking about, technical difficulties. It wouldn't work. And so I'm sitting there, all of a sudden my heart starts pounding, just starts pounding. And I'm going, okay, I think maybe I'm supposed to get up and say something. I'm like, nah. Joey's going to have this fixed any minute now. And it just kept going on. It felt like it went on forever. It was probably only for a few minutes. But I just kept saying, no, Joey's going to get this fixed in no time. I thought that 3 times. Joey's going to get this fixed in no time. Joey's going to get this fixed in no time. And it didn't. So I got up, and my daughter looks at me. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's okay. So I got up and had the lovely daughter of the pastor there translate for me. And I don't even remember exactly what I said, but it was something to the effect of, I challenged God before this trip, and I was angry. And God showed up, and he's continuing to show up. And even in my darkest time, he's there, whether we believe that he is or not, or whether we agree to see him or not, he's there. And, a weight was lifted off my shoulder. My heart stopped pounding. And I sat back down, and wouldn't you know it, the computer worked for our skits. So, and I think after, I don't know if it was Kendall or Joey that said to me afterward, there's no reason that computer didn't work. It was another time, God showing up. The last little story I want to tell you about is zip lining. We had our day away, and it was just a great day to just be with the team, enjoy the beauty of Guatemala, and we had an opportunity to go zip lining, which was amazing. And I had never done that before, and it was super, super high, and my daughter was super, super terrified. And I'm going to sound like a horrible mom, but it was hilarious. So it was the best day ever. So, but she had said to me afterwards, she said, "Mom, I couldn't have gone on those zip lines if you hadn't gone right before me." I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, because maybe she's like, "Well, if you don't die, then I'll go." But it touched my heart anyway. I took it in a good way that she could follow me and trust me and enjoy the moment, and she did. We just really, really enjoyed that day. And on the last zip line across, we're like, 6,500 feet in the air, something like that. Ridiculous high. Like there's trees, and then there could have been 2 more layers of trees. It was really high. But on our last one, we're swinging across this canyon, and I just, I stood backwards, and I leapt, and I just, arms open, leapt out in faith, and which is really nuts if you think about it, because it's just this little cord. But just leapt out in faith, and I just felt such joy. It was the first time in a year that I felt just joy. Because when you lose a child, you still have happy things in life, right? But it's happy and then, but David's not here. Or it's happy and then, oh, I wish David was here. So it's always happy with sorrow. And prior to Guatemala, I thought that was going to be the rest of my life. I didn't think that there would ever be moments of just joy again, and I had it that day. There is not once during that day that I thought, I wish David was here. There wasn't once during that day that, oh, this would be so much better with David, which made me feel bad for a moment, but because you feel like you're forgetting him. But I was able to enjoy that day with my daughter, and I was in the moment with her and this team and just there and present, and that's the first time in a year that I had that. God showed up. I learned a lot from the people and the teaching and the place of Guatemala. But most importantly, I came back from Guatemala with a new hope, a new peace, a mission to live, not just endure. That is what a vision trip is all about. God took me out of where I was comfortable. Joel Van Dyke talked about this. Mark 8, Jesus took the disciples to Caesarea Philippi. And this is kind of where this part comes from. God took me out of where I was comfortable, where I had my safe answers that really weren't helping me anyway, and he challenged me right back. He said, "Okay, Chris, I showed up. Now let's get on with the nuts and bolts of this. Who do you say that I am?" My Jesus today is different than my Jesus before August 3, 2015, and he better be. He wants to be different to me now. I need him to be different to me now. I'm different now, and so is my life mission. You don't have to go halfway across the world and risk your life to be a missionary for God. We can have mission right here. We can make a difference right here, every day. It took me challenging God and going all the way to Guatemala to get the hope and peace that I needed to live this life. But that doesn't have to be the case for you. Learn from me. Events of life will change everything. Losing a child, divorce, cancer, bankruptcy. There's lots of heavy stuff in life that changes everything you think you know. Everything except God. He will show up. Actually, he never left. Sometimes he just waits for us to be ready and willing, and then he opens our eyes.
to him who sits on